Ladies and gentlemen, the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. No president should fear public scrutiny of his program, for from that scrutiny comes understanding, and from that understanding comes support or opposition, and both are necessary. I am not asking your newspapers to support an administration, but I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people, for I have complete confidence in the response and dedication of our citizens whenever they are fully informed. I not only could not stifle controversy among your readers, I welcome it. This administration intends to be candid about its errors, for as a wise man once said, an error doesn't become a mistake until you refuse to correct it. We intend to accept full responsibility for our errors, and we expect you to point them out when we miss them. Without debate, without criticism, no administration and no country can succeed, and no republic can survive. That is why the Athenian lawmaker Solon decreed it a crime for any citizen to shrink from controversy. And that is why our press was protected by the First Amendment, the only business in America specifically protected by the Constitution, not primarily to amuse and entertain, not to emphasize the trivial and the sentimental, not to simply give the public what it wants, but to inform, to arouse, to reflect, to state our dangers and our opportunities, to indicate our crises and our choices, to lead, mold, educate, and sometimes even anger public opinion. So it is to the printing press, to the recorder of man's deeds, the keeper of his conscience, the courier of his news, that we look for strength and assistance, confident that with your help, man will be what he was born to be, free and independent.
information to us faster, providing more content and with more wireless innovation. But it's already receiving more criticism than praise, as analysts warn it could be the end of the internet as we know it. Joining me now for more on the latest from this story and the two multi-billion-dollar corporations is radio talk show host Alex Jones, coming to us from Austin, Texas. Hey there, Alex. Great to have you as always. Now, critics are calling it a direct assault on the concept of net neutrality. What do you say?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's PC World, it's pro-internet freedom organizations like the Electronic Frontiers Foundation. This has been the plan for about a decade. It's a consortium of universities, governments, and corporations, mainly in the West, that have called for Internet 2. And that's all this does, is create a new Internet where all the major investment is put in that is really controlled by government and a select few corporations. And Google has said they want to be the Internet. They want to have a monopoly. As the founder of the Rockefeller dynasty said, competition is a sin. So they let the people invest in the web. They let different smaller Internet service providers build the infrastructure. And then they come in with a two-class system where they can control the content, they can control what websites you're able to visit. We've had other telecommunications companies and cable companies try this in the last few years, but they've been defeated in court, and Congress has told them not to do this. But Google is deeply in bed with the military-industrial complex and basically is the CIA and NSA. And so they've been allowed to do things that other people haven't been able to do and other corporations haven't been able to do. So this is the end of the free web if we allow this to take root.
Alex, I want to ask you something else. You mentioned that there's a government connection here. What can you tell us about how the government or the Obama administration is linked either to Google or Verizon?
Well, sure. I mean, before Obama got into office, he literally is just a front man put in by the same corporations. Bush wrote the Cybersecurity Act during his administration. His administration wrote it, and it sets up hundreds of thousands of domestic spies that the Washington Post reported on in its top secret USA report that will go out and basically control the Internet, police the Internet, and they plan to phase out the old web and force everyone onto this new, highly surveilled, curtailed web that they're going to call a consortium of private networks. But we have Schmidt, the head of Google, and others, swearing to defend Obama, pledging to help carry out his agenda. We have Yahoo doing this as well. And we have Google, admittedly, with In-Q-Tel and others, giving them some of the founding seed money at the beginning. And Google also has one of their main research laboratories as part of NASA. And so Google, from the very beginning, like Microsoft, was really a front company of the military-industrial complex because, in this nation, the government's not supposed to run the major corporations. And so they've just done this by stealth. And now, Cass Sunstein, the White House regulations czar, and others have written public white papers saying they want to shut down the old web incrementally and force people onto something very similar to the Chinese state-run Internet.
Alex, I want to ask you, what does this mean for you? The contents of InfoWars and other sites you participate in aren't exactly pro-corporation. So can we and your viewers, your fans, and you have a lot of them, expect to have you censored? Is that a lingering fear you have?
We get censored all the time by Facebook and Google, and routinely our search terms that we talk about are #1, and they remove them and make them non-searchable. So we deal with the attempts to curtail and stop the viral spread of our information. I am pro-free market. I'm a constitutionalist, a libertarian. I'm against these mega corporations that are bigger than most governments combining forces together to use government to consolidate markets and create cartels and oligopolies. And so, yes, look for Infowars.com, PrisonPlanet.com to be censored more and more. Already at major corporations and at, quote, free government broadband where you pay tax money in Europe and England, at the major bus terminals and train stations, you can't visit my websites. Australia talked about banning sites, and for a while you couldn't go to InfoWars, and some of the major ISPs were blocking it also in New Zealand. And so they're testing all of this, but every time they try it, there's a major public outcry. But not just my websites. They're trying to curtail and restrict access to other governments' websites and other foreign news agencies. This is a move by the corporate interests that dominate the United States and England.
Alex, I want to ask you something else. I want to ask you something else because we have a package I'd like you to take a look at. Now, the president of free speech, and since you mentioned being a threat to governments and free speech, the president of free speech, John Silver, wrote in an op-ed in the Huffington Post that the merger is like BP and Halliburton ironing out the rules for offshore drilling with no public input and having the minerals management services sign off on it. What do you make of that analysis?
Well, that quote is 100% on. That is exactly what's happening. That's what the New World Order is, in their own words. It's global corporations individually. Take Walmart. It's bigger than most major nations' GDPs. They have their own intelligence networks. It's the same thing with Google and Verizon. They are simply declaring what they're going to do. That's what globalism is corporations becoming the government. It's the same thing with this new banking agreement worldwide, where the 6 big mega banks will now issue their own global currency, their own SDRs. And so they're just announcing that they now have control of the old internet, and they're going to force everyone onto their internet where they can charge you more and restrict and control what you can do, because the power structure is on record saying they're scared of the free press that is now supplanting mainstream media.
Alex, I want to get into something else because we're speaking of censorship, but surveillance will become one of the main features for all EU flights. That announcement is in, and RT's Laura Emmett has the latest.
Off for a week in the sun. But if a European Union project goes ahead, these people could have their conversations and movements monitored while they're flying. The plan has alarmed civil liberties campaigners who fear further growth in the surveillance state. But air passengers are divided.
Yeah, I think that's bad. Just because it's like private and personal, you wouldn't, I don't know, I think there's a line, and they keep pushing it with like the regulations. And
I think it's so prevalent already that just expect it. You watch TV on land, you watch TV in the air, you'll be surveilled on land, you'll be surveilled in the air.
It doesn't worry me. I've got nothing to hide, so it wouldn't worry me personally, no.
The EU project is aimed at tackling terrorism by analysing the way passengers behave in a bid to isolate potential bombers or hijackers when they're already on board. At the moment, surveillance on planes is mainly limited to a CCTV camera near the cockpit.
Britons are the most watched people in the world, with more CCTV cameras per capita than any other nation. There are cameras on motorways, in train stations and in airports. And it's here at the University of Reading that the new